everyone. Welcome into a post-Oakland edition of Tori's Take presented by Priority Health. I'm Tori Petrie. Well, if there's one thing we can say, it's that the Lions never fail to keep things interesting in the fourth quarter this season. Unfortunately, they've been on the losing or tying end of interesting too many times this year, and it felt like the same movie again in Oakland on Sunday. The Lions had a chance to get a leg up on the rest of the division on Sunday as everyone else in the NFC North lost, and they couldn't do it. They had a chance to stop the Raiders from scoring in the waning minutes of the fourth quarter, and they couldn't do it. They had 4 chances at the goal in the final seconds of the game, and again, they just couldn't come away with the win. Last night's loss was a heartbreaker, as on 4th and goal, knocking on the end zone with seconds to go. While that nail in the coffin was brutal, there was far more that went wrong in that game besides that single play. First off, the turnover battle. 2 Raiders touchdowns came off of turnovers. First, the botched handoff in the first quarter on an otherwise solid offensive drive that led to the Raiders' first score. And then again when Darryl Worley made a big play on a Stafford pass to Kenny Golladay in the end zone, picking off the pass with one hand. That was just a plain good play. But both of those turnovers happened in field goal range. The turnovers turning into points for the opposition has been a consistent theme this year. The offense gives the ball up within scoring range, and the defense lets the opponent score off of the opportunity instead. Point swings in those situations are just hard to overcome. On the subject of the defense, it's perplexing why they have struggled like they have after we all thought that would be the Lions' strength this season. Matt Patricia says it's a lack of consistency, puts the responsibility on the coaches first and foremost. Trey Flowers says there's a need for better focus on the details, and Darius Slay says the opponent is winning all of the 50-50 opportunities right now. I don't have the answer. If it were a simple fix, the Lions would have figured it out by now, but the same defensive issues continue to plague them, and you can't win games when you have 1 sack and 171 rushing yards allowed. On the upside, though, Kenny Golladay and Marvin Jones Jr. are the real deal. Not that you didn't already know that, but seriously, both of them having 125-plus yard games is just so impressive. For Marv, it was a return to the Bay Area where he played college ball at Cal, and for Kenny, it was his 26th birthday. Big days for both guys. Not to be overlooked, of course, is the guy slinging it to them, Matthew Stafford. What a year for him and that arm. 406 passing yards in this one. The offense may not have much of a run game right now, but man, that passing game is fun to watch. It's also amazing how they continue to make big plays in the passing game despite the lack of a run game. That speaks to the talent of the guys catching the ball and most certainly the one throwing it as well. But the passing game can't carry this entire team. I certainly don't think they should move away from the pass because it's working, but the run game could stand to help out a little bit. Even still, they had nearly 500 yards on offense. The defense needs to find a way to hold strong to support that effort, especially in fourth quarters. There's still more to come on Tori's Take presented by Priority Health. Coming up after the break, we'll answer your questions and give you the extra point. Don't go anywhere.
Last year, Mark finished last in his fantasy baseball league, so this year he brought his daughter to the draft.
Him?
Smart. Like choosing Priority Health Insurance. It's how smart people access a network that includes 97% of primary care doctors in Michigan.
End zone. Caught! Oh, baby, what a catch! Oh, the football. Yes. The Lions have got it! Gonna get hit.
Yes.
Gonna get sacked. Oh, this place is on fire now.
Josie is smarter than every person in every park in Michigan.
Checkmate.
Smarter than every person in the world. That's smart. Like choosing Priority Health Insurance.
Checkmate.
It's how smart people access a network that includes 97% of primary care doctors in Michigan.
Welcome back into Tori's Take Live, presented by Priority Health. Every week we like to take you around the league with our extra point segment. So this week we are taking you to the Packers-Chargers game where the announcers took a little bit of a field trip down to the sidelines. Typically they are up in the box viewing the game, but for this particular game, Jim Nantz and Tony Romo walked down to the sidelines to call part of the game. Tracy Wolfson was delivering a sideline report when the camera panned wide and revealed these two calling the game from the sidelines. Quite an unusual act here. So why the parade down to the sidelines? Well, it was a little bit of a visual demonstration of how bad the Packers offense was in that game. It took Nantz and Romo 60 yards to move down to the field. At the time, the Green Bay offense only had 52 yards of offense. Ouch. All right, guys, let's get to your questions that you sent in before the show. This first one is from One Pride. He asks, the interception by Stafford, in my opinion, had a 90% chance to be incomplete, a 9% chance to be a touchdown, and a 1% chance to become an interception. That's the risk you take when you have such a great quarterback. What do you think? Well, I talked about that at the top of the show, and I agree with you. I mean, you put a lot of math into that question there. I can't say that the statistics are exactly correct, but you're probably in the right ballpark. It was a tight window throw there, and Kenny Golladay was in position, and Daryl Worley just got his hand right in there and pulled down the one-handed catch. Honestly, that was just a big play by the defender. I don't fault that throw too much. I think that's a throw that Stafford has to make. That, 9 times out of 10, Kenny Golladay is going to come down with that one because usually he's going up there and getting those 50-50 balls, and I don't think that this was a mistake so much as it was just a really good play by Daryl Worley. Let's take this next question from Blondie. They ask, there's still a half of the season to play and much to learn about this team. What defensive unit's development is the most interesting to track? Linebackers, secondary, or D-line? Well, I think that there's something to track in all three of those groups, as none of them have really been performing to their full potential. My answer is going to be the defensive line. That group definitely needs to be playing better and be playing to the potential that we all thought that they had at the beginning of this season. Now they have been plagued with injuries, and that has been part of it, but you still have Trey Flowers out there, and you've gotten Deshaun Hand back in the lineup, but as I've answered on other questions sent in to Tori's Take Live before, I thought it would take Deshaun Hand a little bit of time to get back into the groove and shake the rust off after being injured early in training camp. You obviously want to see Mike Daniels back out there and getting in the groove as well, so that the injuries on that defensive line has certainly affected them, but they've got to find a way to be more effective in getting after the passer. We've seen little flashes here and there of their ability to get after the passer, but just not enough yet. As far as the linebackers, they haven't been playing well enough yet either. That group is going to have to improve as the season goes on. I'd like to see more blitzing from them as well, since the pass rush just hasn't been where it needs to be. And then you look at the secondary, who has played pretty strong in the beginning of the season. We've talked about that before on Tori's Take, especially with the way they were punching out balls and the performance of Justin Coleman. But with the injuries they've had in the secondary and the personnel moves ahead of the trade deadline, it has definitely shaken things up for them and forced some young guys to step in and play big roles. Obviously, with Tracy Walker being injured, Will Harris has really had to step into a huge role early on in his rookie year. And so that is part of something we will be watching, is his development in the secondary as well. And then who's playing opposite of Darius Slay as the season goes along, if that is going to be Rashawn Melvin or Justin Coleman, and then who's in the slot. If Justin Coleman is playing on the outside, there are certainly plenty of things to watch with this secondary as they have changed over the course of this season. We saw a lot of strong play from them early in the year, but we definitely need to see some growth from them as different guys have had to step into different roles as the season has continued. But to answer your question, the defensive line is probably the biggest one to watch as the season goes along. All right, this final question is from Austin Smith. He says, Tori, when times are darkest, you are a light in our lives. Thank you. Austin, thank you. You guys are a light in my lives when times are dark as well. So thank you all so much for tuning in to Tori's Take, presented by Priority Health. We appreciate you guys joining us each and every week. We'll see you next week.